Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the latest YouGov polling in the context of poll movement. YouGov have now produced 3 full-scale MRP polls this year, so it allows us to see how things have been changing, and that change is towards a genuine change in politics. Not a once-in-a-generation change of direction, like a real change of politics, almost in reach. Because when you look at voting intention polls, for example, it's been largely static for a long time. There's been some extra loss of Conservative votes to Reform UK, mostly from the undecideds. Some loss of Labour votes to the Lib Dems, which when you look at where it is, appears to be tactical, with Labour also gaining some Lib Dem votes in their target areas as well. So little bits of movement like that. But the poll gap hasn't really changed much. And, you know, everyone gets so fixated on the poll gap that you might be forgiven for thinking, nothing's really changing at all. Or the Tories haven't narrowed the polls, but it's not getting any wider. You know, the campaign's done nothing at all, but that's not the case. So first of all, let's look at the seat projections across all 3 of YouGov's MRP polls this year. Now, as I mentioned in my video on the Ipsos MRP yesterday, I think the interest is more on the Conservative and Lib Dem seats right now. However, because Labour are a fairly big player in the election, you know, being the party that's on course for winning maybe double the votes of the next place party, I should probably include those as well. So the 3 MRPs were published in early April, which was just before the local elections, then the start of this month, 2 months later, and the third was yesterday. So back in April, the seat projections look like this. Labour on 403 seats, the Conservatives on 155 and the Lib Dems on 49. In other words, a 1997 style result. Labour get their landslide, nothing to tear the history books over. The Conservatives would get what would probably be technically their worst result, but, you know, not by much. By the start of June, Labour were on 422 seats, the Tories on 140, the Lib Dems on 48. So the situation had gotten worse for the Tories. They were now moving more towards a 1906 style defeat, their worst ever, but it would still allow them to lead the opposition and recover, if they choose to recover. Doesn't sound like they want to at the moment. But the latest MRP puts Labour on 425 seats. The Tories have crashed to 108 and the Lib Dems have surged to 67. That is a bigger movement in the last 2 weeks than the previous 2 months. So what gives? Well, there are a few things which are potentially at play here. First, the election is drawing nearer, and the closer we get to polling day, the more people are firming up their thinking on how they want to use their vote, if they want to use it at all. Second, Nigel Farage entered the arena. This was always predicted to have a significant impact, but I think when you consider the catastrophic Tory campaign, Farage's impact has, if anything, been amplified by that. Third, Rishi Sunak committed the most insane sin in leaving the D-Day events early. For those who may not think this was all that big a deal, it has triggered an immediate change in the Conservative campaign messages. They know they messed up and messed up big time. The fact that it drew an apology of sorts from Sunak the next day shows the panic that must have swept Number 10 when they saw what was, for the rest of us, a predictable fallout from their stupidity. So the huge drop is understandable. The question is, can it drop further? Well, yes, it can, because these seat projections are really just the mathematical model saying which party or candidate is most likely to win given seats, even if it's like by 0.1% of the vote. But sometimes, that, you know, as I say, in a lot of these cases, we're finding that probability is really small. And also consider any lead up to 5% is within the margin of error. Could easily be the other way around. So if you see a seat, it looks like the Tories are going to win it by, say, 4%. Actually, it could be the Lib Dems winning it by 3% or something. You know, and these MRP polls are showing that in terms of the Tories winning seats by, let's say, 6%, above the margin for error, let's say about 6%, I'll do it quickly. So in the April MRP, it said there was about 100 seats where they could expect to win above the, beyond the margin of error. Even though the projection was for 155 seats. So that was 55 seats that were being given to the Tories in that model, but were highly uncertain. In the second poll, it dropped from 100 seats to 74 seats, winning by 6% or more. Now it's 60 seats. And remember, 6% isn't safe. It's just that that is outside the margin of error. Assuming the model is strong, the Tories will really need at least 10% to feel reasonably safe, to account for the fact that there might be a polling error in their favour, which isn't really votes there. And also, they can still lose more ground in the remaining 2 weeks. I reckon if you were to ask Tories today if they would prefer it if the election were taking place today rather than in another 14 days, they would take it. Because at the moment, I think they're in full damage limitation mode. I don't think they even think they can gain more votes now. It's clear from their campaign that they've given up. Rishi Sunak is only doing very low-key engagements now. He's campaigning in areas and on platforms which have traditionally been rock solid for the Conservatives. The front pages of today's newspapers are something else. Yesterday, the Tory client media was all about doom and gloom on Labour taxes. Today, it's all about the Tories being wiped out. The Times were oddly kindest to them, describing it as the worst defeat in 100 years. No. What we're looking at is the worst defeat ever. But again, what's the purpose of the Tory client media saying this? They're trying to stop people voting Labour. They're trying to get people to think, oh, Labour on for this massive landslide. Oh, we don't need to bother. But remember, the contest now is not about who forms the government. That is going to be Labour. It's about who do you want asking the questions of Labour? Who do you want putting Labour's feet to the fire, the Conservatives or the Lib Dems? That's what we need to get people to understand. You know, what many want is the wipeout in the Telegraph. But I have to say that image that they've got on the front page there, they say it's of an MRP projection. It's a bit weird because none of the MRP results produce that map. It would appear that what they're actually doing is playing fast and loose with a seat projection poll, which is not the same thing. Doesn't use anywhere near as many data points. Still, accuracy in the Daily Telegraph have not been on speaking terms for a very long time. In terms of how this MRP compares to the other recent ones from Survation and Ipsos. So Survation is the most spectacular in many ways because it has Labour on 443 seats, the Conservatives on 83 and the Lib Dems on 53. Ipsos has got Labour on 453, Tories on 115, Lib Dems on 38. But as I noted yesterday, most of those Tory seats are considered a toss-up. In terms of the seats that the Ipsos thinks are likely, the Tories are only winning 2 more than the Lib Dems. Remember, you always have this uncertainty of 5% on all statistical models. And there are so many seats. In fact, there are so many seats now within the margin for error. You've got to feel sorry for the pollsters because the chances of anyone getting it anything like spot on this year is probably nil. It's going to be toss. It's going to be really pot luck. So many seats that are just so close. It's incredible to think that after 14 years of the worst Tory government we've probably ever had, and certainly ever had in my lifetime, and where it is certain we're getting a Labour government, and I'm a Labour supporter, there's an outcome where I'm disappointed on results day. I could actually be sad on July the 5th. Can you believe that? And it is because there's a more glittering prize on offer. It's actually possible to stop the Tories not just running the country, but running the narrative as well. To an extent, they still own the media. But if they can't lead the opposition, their relevance is way less. Imagine the scenario that is possible. This is possible. The results are done. Parliament forms. Nigel Farage is saying, I'm the leader of the opposition. No, says Rishi Sunak, I'm the leader of the opposition, at least until I go to California. I think you'll find, butts in Ed Davey, I'm actually the leader of the opposition now. Now stop bickering, you two, and get out of my way. On all of these recent MRP polls show how just a few percent more voting tactically can make that happen. Doesn't need everyone voting tactically, because that'd be ridiculous. Doesn't even need the majority, because that's not realistic either. It just needs a little bit more than are already saying they will. What the polls show is that it can happen. There's a real chance that politics finally changes in a meaningful and visible way. But the polls also show that it's not currently likely. What is currently most likely? The Tories lead the opposition. But it is within reach. Not quite enough for reaching out for it. So please remember, the difference could be the few people like you persuading another few people that you know who aren't intending to vote to go out and vote. And maybe if they weren't intending to vote at all, if you can persuade them to vote, they're maybe happy to use their vote tactically using Stop the Tories, Don't Vote. Remember, this is not just for Tory Lib Dem contests either. To get the Lib Dems into second place, you have to do two things. Yes, of course, you need the Lib Dems to win as many seats as possible. But there are only so many they can realistically win. The current polls at the moment are giving the nod on enough Tory seats to eclipse that. So we also need to bring down the Tories to a lower level. And that cannot be done with Tory Lib Dem contests alone. In every seat where there is a Tory candidate, it would be helpful for as many people who are willing to vote tactically for the strongest challenger to them. It's like the fingertips are on the prize here. There's 2 more weeks to get a firm grasp on it and pull. We're at a real moment, not just a change of government. That's coming. A change of politics. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.